Tranzit. Tranzit. The most hated map in COD Zombies history. The most flawed map in COD Zombies history. And the biggest meme in the community. You know, it wasn't always like this. Back in 2012 when the map first launched with BO2, people hadn't quite figured this out yet. People hadn't quite realized how poorly designed this map is. People hadn't figured out how AIDS Tranzit truly was until some time went by and until a few famous top 5 videos shed some light onto the subject.
Coming in at number 1 on our top 5 worst zombie maps of all time, we have Tranzit. Tranzit is by far the worst zombies map of all time. You start on this little bus depot and everything is just shitty. Shitty colors, shitty atmosphere, shitty characters, shitty everything. This bus is supposed to be the best time ever. Salvation. You're gonna get your jug, gonna get everything. It's gonna be great. Gonna be your home. Well, guess what? Sorry, the only gun on here is a freaking B23R that isn't much good after round 7. So you better go to the diner and get a gun from the mystery box. Well, sorry, Buttercup, but you're not gonna be here very long because the bus is gonna leave. So you only got pretty much one roll at the box. All right, well then let's head on to the farm. What's here? Oh, nothing. Sorry, this is a waste of space. We didn't know what to put here, but we wanted to have a big map, so we just put it in here anyway. All right, power center, we're here. You got a 50-50 shot of the bus not leaving on you and getting the power on. If the bus does leave, guess what? You got to walk through the fog, and you know what's in the fog? Denizens, motherfucker. You are at the town. You are ready to do this. You got your jug. You're awesome. This place is your salvation. You're here. You're happy. Sorry, we don't have any guns. Yeah, it's the town. I know. You'd think we'd have a lot of guns, but no, we don't. We have Pack-a-Punch. You want a Pack-a-Punch? All right, bud. Here's what you gotta do. Head back to the bus depot, get a turbine. Now you're gonna want to head back over to the power center. Turn it on, put it by a door, and that may turn on the power door to the Pack-a-Punch. But you only got a 50-50 shot, so, I mean, good luck. If that doesn't work, you're gonna have to go do that all again with dealing with the denizens. So have a good time with all that. This is Tranzit, motherfucker.
We started realizing how shitty this map is, so much so that it's referred to commonly as trans shit. This map quickly became the punching bag for all aggression in the zombies community. Anytime you were pissed off about anything zombies related, you could just rant about this map. The hatred and the toxicity towards this map was plentiful. And if we're being entirely honest here, I think the map was scrutinized a little excessively. I think people, on top of all the legitimate criticisms, were blindly hating the map as well. And I was never one of those people that blindly hated Tranzit. There were a lot of people out there that just went along with the meme, hopped on the bandwagon, and just shat on this map with some of the bigger YouTubers. And though yes, objectively, I do find Tranzit to be an absolute dumpster fire, subjectively, in my own personal opinion, I don't like hating on it so much. I do think it can be a very fun map, especially with a group of people. I am going to tear this map. Let me rephrase that. I'm going to break this map down, but I'm not going to shit on it because that has been done so many different times in so many different ways. Let's talk about Tranzit. Let's not rant about Tranzit. As most of you know, I analyze a Treyarch Zombies map every Sunday night. Unfortunately, it's Monday instead of Sunday. That's because my schedule is shifting around quite a bit. I'm officially done with high school, but I still have to graduate and I still have to rehearse for that. This is the absolute last week of slow uploads until summer hits. And when summer hits, the grind ensues and I will upload a lot more frequently. Hopefully, you guys understand. And go follow me on Twitter because on Twitter, I update you guys as to what's going on when I'm not uploading. I updated you guys about this exact scenario. So thank you so much. Let's talk about Tranzit. Tranzit takes place after the events of Moon. After completing the Moon Easter egg, swapping souls with Samantha, controlling the zombies through ether, and blowing up the Earth, Richtofen now has total power. We shift from Samantha-controlled zombies in Black Ops 1 to Richtofen-controlled zombies in Black Ops 2. And as a result of the rockets detonating on Earth, the Earth is in shambles. As a result of the Moon Easter egg, Tranzit and Black Ops 2 Zombies at large is born. These events not only mold the Victus storyline, but also explain the physical attributes of Tranzit on Earth after the bombs detonated. It explains the shifts in tectonic plates, it explains the lava, the fog, pretty much everything. In this post-apocalyptic wasteland, the 4 Victus characters link together. Abigail Briarton, aka Misty, Marlton Johnson, Samuel Stuhlinger, and Russman, all of course with their own depth and their own character development, which honestly I could spend a few minutes talking about, but the most important character is Samuel Stuhlinger. We'll talk about him a little bit later. The 4 characters unite in the northern Pacific region of the US with one common goal: two common goals: to either appease Richtofen in his quest or Maxis in his, because Maxis is still alive in some ethereal form. This is where the Easter egg steps into play, and in a very unique style, one in which the player had never previously experienced. The player had two choices. They could either go down one path with Maxis or one path with Richtofen. It offered a duality to the story, which was refreshing, and this would carry on to both Die Rise and Buried in future Victus maps. Both quests were very similar, but varied slightly in terms of individual steps. They had a common goal of charging up the pylon. It was just a matter of which path you preferred, and it really did come down to personal preference. Did you want to help out Maxis in his quest or Richtofen in his? I personally believe that Maxis' side on Transit is easier, but the opposite could be said about Die Rise. Buried is difficult either way. It just depends on which set of steps you wanted to complete. But you completed it, and you charged up the pylon. That is the Transit Easter egg. With a couple of buildables and a little bit of RNG, you probably completed this Easter egg within an hour. It's not too difficult. It does require 4 players, but with good coordination is a very simple Easter egg. And with Stuhlinger's ability to hear Richtofen through ether due to his consumption of rotten flesh, he will guide you through the Easter egg. This is why Samuel Stuhlinger is so important. Now that we've analyzed the story, where we are, why we're here, and who's here with us, we can finally discuss the map itself. There is a lot to unpack with this map, so I'm going to break it down just like this, as if I was playing the game, as if I was going through Transit. You spawn in Bus Depot with a couple of barriers and a couple of buildable parts. You build the turbine and you exit the building for free, and then you're greeted with the bus. We're going to be at Bus Depot for a couple of minutes, probably long enough to finish round 1, potentially 2 if you're quick enough, but then we hop in the bus, we start rolling. The bus has many points of entry in which the player and the zombies can get on. Of course, there's the default method in walking through the doors, there's also the barriers that the zombies can crawl through, there's also the top, and there's also the front. My point being that the bus is 100% vulnerable at all times, and when going slow can get very crowded with zombies. The bus, though of course very helpful for getting around the map, is very hazardous as well, especially with a group of zombies surrounding you. Assuming you don't want to hop out midway through the ride to deal with the denizens, which you don't, you're going to have to stick on the bus with a B23R, which on later rounds may not do you too much good, and a couple of parts that can be attached that are scattered around the map for convenience sake. My point is, it's very, very easy to be totally overwhelmed on the bus, whether it's moving or whether it's not. The bus, though ideal for survival, is a total risk. There are too many points of entry for the zombies to get through. It becomes very difficult to manage, especially on higher rounds, and is also, may I add, very inconsistent in when it leaves, arrives. The vehicle in which you navigate around this giant map is already a problem. We show up at the diner. The diner is one of the better parts of the map. There are quite a few things to it. The first thing that's going to catch your attention is the mystery box. It always spawns here first, which is one of the very few things about Transit that's consistent. You don't have very long at the diner because the bus is very eager to continue moving on, so you can spin the box once or twice, or you can choose to go into the diner, get some of the shield parts, build that. You could open up the shack and potentially get one of those parts. You don't have a ton of time to work with, but there is a lot to Diner. There's Speed Cola, the Galvanuckles, which are very helpful for taking out Avogadro. There's also quite a bit of lava at Diner, but also quite a bit of training space as well. But the bus is moving on. We're out of time. Ted angrily honks his horn at you. You hop back on the bus, and at this point, we have something decent. We have an MP5, we have a B23R, maybe an M14, whatever it is. It's probably not great. Maybe you got lucky with the box. We're moving on to Farm. Farm is definitely one of the worst areas of Transit, not only in terms of spacing and survivability, but also resources. There is a mystery box location. It's not going to be there. You were just at the mystery box. There's double tap. You haven't quite got the power on yet. You can build a turret, but it's not fantastic. There is a fridge in which you can swap your weapons in and out of throughout different games, which is helpful. But aside from this, it's a very compressed area of the map, very aesthetically unpleasant. We don't have a lot of time anyways, we're getting out of Farm. We finally arrive at the power station and turn on the power. Pretty self-explanatory. There are 3 parts. It isn't difficult to do, but you are timed, of course, because the bus is very, very quick to get at a power station. This is easily, in my opinion, from experience, one of the shortest stops in the game. You quickly turn on the power, generate Avogadro, and you move on as quick as possible. You can build the electric trap. Nobody really uses that. There's also Tombstone now, which is one of the worst perks in Call of Duty Zombies. And aside from turning on the power itself, this segment of the map is borderline useless. Assuming you don't get left behind, you make your way to your final destination, Town, which is not only the most iconic part of Transit, but also the best for survival. There is a ton of space. Granted, a lot of lava, but a ton of space to work with. There's Jug. There's Stamina, which you can now purchase because the power's on. There's a mystery box location. There is also the bank. You can withdraw and deposit points from previous games. Honestly, it's a little game-breaking in my opinion, but hey, Transit is kind of AIDS. They tossed us the bone here. And that's the entire route. This was the first run, just getting all of the basics out of the way. Getting a gun, getting some parts for the jet gun, for some buildables. Of course, everybody plays it differently. Some people stay instead of hopping on the bus. Some people stay at some locations longer than others. I can't speak for everybody, but this is ideal for me. Now that I'm at town, I'm gonna hop back in the bus and head back to Bus Depot and repeat the entire cycle. I'm gonna spin the box a couple more times, probably get a better weapon, get all of my perks, more than likely save up for Galvanuckles depending on what round it is, and eventually pack-a-punch a weapon, which is easily the worst pack-a-punch routine I've ever witnessed in a zombies map. All you have to do to pack-a-punch on this map is make your way to Power Station, place down a turbine. If you don't have one, go all the way back to Bus Depot to grab one, place it down right here. Just pray to God that a zombie doesn't break it while you walk away, make your way to town, bust open the door, and build the pack-a-punch machine. This only works about 50% of the time because there is a good possibility that a zombie broke it. If they did, you have to go back, get another turbine, rinse and repeat, make your way back to town, and retry. If at any point during the entire game a zombie breaks this turbine, whether or not you've already built a pack-a-punch machine, you have to go back and recharge it. It is just dreadful. It is a long, painstaking process, unnecessarily irritating, not necessarily difficult, just tedious. But hey, maybe we don't even need a pack-a-punch. Maybe there's an infinite damage wonder weapon that'll help you out. Well, if you manage to get the jet gun parts and build the jet gun, you have the jet gun, and the jet gun is inarguably the worst wonder weapon in Call of Duty Zombies history. It literally breaks. It breaks after just seconds of using it. You have to go back and grab all of the parts again, which are scattered in the middle of fucking nowhere. There's one part in Nocturne Toten, which is all the way out in the middle of a cornfield, which don't even get me started on that. Building this thing, using this thing, everything about the jet gun is just fucking awful. I'm pretty good about getting gameplay for these types of videos. When I got gameplay for Transit, I actually refused to grab the jet gun parts. It is actually that bad. Now look, I get it. If you're a very good zombies player, you can use this thing to its fullest potential, and it's probably not a half-bad wonder weapon. But let's think practically. Let's think for the average player. Practically, it's a terrible wonder weapon. Technically, it's probably not the worst. But the jet gun is nothing short of a kick in the balls. The majority of Transit is a giant kick in the balls. On top of everything I've addressed thus far, you also have Avogadro, who spawns in every couple of rounds, follows you, shocks you to the point of red screening until you dismiss him either with an EMP grenade, a Galvanuckles, or a melee weapon of some sorts. So there's not only Avogadro, but there's also lava, which is constantly burning you. Pretty much every other square foot, there's a patch of lava. There's also denizens who rape your face in the fog while you run from point A to point B, assuming you missed the bus or you have to grab a part out in the middle of nowhere. On top of all of these large issues, there are also many irritating and inconvenient factors that stack up on it, ultimately making Transit AIDS. And every segment of the map has at least one terrible quality. Bus Depot, simply too small. Diner, too much lava. Both farm and power station, aesthetically unpleasant and lack of feasible survival space. And town doesn't have a single gun. Not one gun. I could go on and on and on about how poorly designed this map is. The point is, Transit sucks. It's objectively the worst map of all time, but there is more to it than just that. You see, Transit was highly anticipated. It was expected to be one of the best maps, if not the best, of all time. Transit should have been the best map of all time. After BO1's epic conclusion with Moon, this map was expected to innovate like none other. This map was supposed to be a brand new experience, and you know, it somewhat was. I mean, we got Double Tap 2, Tombstones, new perks. We got new characters, we got new guns, buildables. It did innovate quite a bit, but in terms of its actual design and its flow and how well the map plays, it just fell flat. The potential was certainly there. The concept was certainly there. Transit could have been and should have been the best map of all time, but it was too aspirational for its own good. Treyarch bit off more than they could chew with Transit, and that ultimately was the fatal flaw. First of all, let's consider that Transit is on last gen, and last gen certainly has its limitations. The graphics can only be pushed so far, the engine can only produce so much. Transit was so big and so expansive that the engine simply couldn't render in everything. The engine simply couldn't render in everything that you're seeing at once without crashing. It simply wouldn't work out, which is is why the map is covered with fog. The fog, at first glance, seems like an unnecessary middle finger by Treyarch, saying basically, you know, fuck you, you're not going to be able to see anything because we don't want you to. This is Tranzit. Sure, the fog and the ash serve a purpose in the atmosphere, being all post-apocalyptic and everything like that, but it's really much simpler than that. The fog was simply required for the engine to handle the rendering of the map. And the denizens, believe it or not, serve the exact same purpose, to slow everything down. Treyarch needed a buffer, something to slow the player down so the game wouldn't crash, so the engine could handle everything, and the denizens are a great way to slow the player down. Very fucking annoying, don't get me wrong, but it had to happen for Tranzit to work out. So right off the bat, you have some of the most cancerous qualities of Tranzit, both the fog and the denizens paired together, simply to slow the player down, simply forced into the map to make the map even work. Could you imagine Tranzit without the fog? Could you imagine seeing everything that's being covered up with the fog? It would be astronomical. And this isn't speculation. Treyarch has openly talked about this. I'll actually play a clip from my buddy John explain this.
The main rumor as to why Tranzit was such a bad map is because it was too ambitious for that generation of consoles. They were really pushing the limits of those systems, and at the time, those consoles were 6-7 years old. They were really getting to the end of their lifespan. These things were incorporated into the map to slow you down, so a player could run from one end of the map to the other, and he moves too quickly. He moves so quickly that the game doesn't have time to load everything in, so it crashes. You can actually see this sometimes when you go into theater mode and move too quickly from one end of the map to the other. The game can't handle it. There isn't enough memory to load in all of the things at once. This is why things like the fog allowed them to use lower resolution textures and also block your point of view so they don't have to render as far, as well as lava and things like the denizens, so that you're moving from one area to the next, you're also slowed down. You can only move so quickly on the lava, and the denizens specifically stop you in your tracks while you're trying to rip them off your head. So this gave the game time and also freed up memory so that it could load in new parts of the map. Jason explains that Tranzit was an ambitious game mode. It had a lot of different ideas, and it wanted to push zombies into new places it had never been before. And unfortunately, Tranzit was a little too ambitious for its own good. Tranzit had all these different game modes that they planned. So there's the standard sort of zombies, there were the custom zombies, and there was grief mode. Those were the different game modes that we saw on disc. But there were other game modes that we never saw or heard of, and Jason started to delve into them.
I'll link the full video in the description. Definitely check that out after this. It's a very interesting video. The point is, Treyarch had a lot of hope for Tranzit, and they were pushing in different game modes, and they were pushing in all of these features that it couldn't handle, and that's why Tranzit was forced to do all of these shitty things, like include denizens and fog and lava. Yes, it does make sense in terms of the atmosphere, but they were forced. Could you imagine Tranzit on next gen not having been forced to implement all of these features to slow down and keep up with the last gen? If Tranzit was on next gen, the denizens didn't exist, and the lava and the fog were dialed down, this map could have been an entirely new thing. Now, the fact that Tranzit was on last gen isn't a valid excuse for it being such a poorly designed map, because it doesn't really explain every single terrible thing about Tranzit, and there are a lot of other last gen maps that are fantastic, so it isn't a total excuse. It doesn't blanket over all of the flaws, but it certainly explains a lot. Treyarch had big plans for Tranzit. This map was supposed to be larger than life, and unfortunately, they bit off more than they could chew. The last gen engine could not handle the aspiration this map contained, which of course forced them to implement so many cancerous qualities which we all meme on today about Tranzit. They even had more game modes planned. I mean, we already had Turned and Grief, but they had more coming, but unfortunately they just couldn't get it down the pipeline. There was too much to deal with. Again, the concept was fantastic. The idea of riding a bus to each individual stop, getting off, getting all of your perks, your guns, rounding up everything, it's a really good one. The potential for Tranzit to succeed was there, but unfortunately due to last gen and due to a generally poor design, it just fell flat, and it should have been the best map of all time, but it just wasn't, and it ironically became the worst map of all time. Personally, I think Tranzit can be a very fun map with a group of friends. Solo, it's sort of a disaster. It's really not meant for one person, but with a group of people, with the amount of chaos that's going on, ironically, the map can be fun. Objectively, yes, Tranzit sucks donkey dick, but the way I see it is that it's so bad, it's so chaotic, and so fucked up that it's really fun. and it's kind of memey, and I really enjoyed that. Let me know what you think of Tranzit down below in the comments section. I'm going to get a lot of hate for this video because a lot of people do really enjoy Tranzit, and people will not appreciate me dismantling it and rubbing my ass all over it, but I hope you guys did enjoy. If you did, make sure to leave a like. I do have merch. Check it out in the description. If you purchase anything and send me a picture on Twitter, I will follow you. You are the fucking greatest. Subscribe so you don't miss the next video. I'm going to be analyzing Nuketown Zombies upcoming, and I hope you enjoy that. I hope you have a great day. I'm sort of ending this video abruptly. There's probably a lot more to say about Tranzit than I have been saying, but I just feel like I just want to stop talking about it. So, have a good day, man.